Thank you for subscribing to our channel. Today is Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Fox report: Florida cop runs against siblings in fun foot race. A Florida police officer took off on a foot race Sunday against a brother-sister duo. It was a rematch 5 years in the making, according to the Tampa Police Department. In a Facebook post, K-9 Master Patrol Officer T. Bergman said he had lost a foot race 5 years ago against a local youth named Nas, who grasped the win by a step. On Sunday, Bergman called for a rematch. The video has already garnered thousands of views.
Fox report: 283 law enforcement officers shot, 44 fatally wounded as year-end nears, stats show. New statistics released by the National Fraternal Order of Police show 283 law enforcement officers were shot, 44 of whom were killed so far this year. The latest statistics represent the number of law enforcement officers shot nationwide from the beginning of the year to November 30, 2020, said the FOP, the largest law enforcement union in the country. Attacks on law enforcement officers continue at a disturbing pace, the organization wrote on its Instagram page about the latest figures.
Deutsche Welle report: car kills 4, injures several in Trier pedestrian zone. Police said the driver was a local man from the Trier area and was not known to police. The car was a Land Rover sports utility vehicle that did not belong to the driver, but was lent to him by another person. The suspect was found to have been living in the car in the days leading up to the attack and had a high alcohol content in his blood after a test was performed. Following his arrest, the premier of Rhineland-Palatinate, Malu Dreyer, expressed shock about the events in Trier, her hometown, in what she called a terrible day for the city and the country.
Deutsche Welle report: Sri Lanka to release hundreds of inmates as death toll from prison riot rises. The Sri Lankan government agreed on Tuesday to release hundreds of prisoners held for minor offences and said it would free thousands more after a deadly riot broke out over coronavirus cases at one of its many overcrowded jails. Justice Minister Ali Sabri told Parliament that a total of 607 inmates had been given a general amnesty after Sunday's riot and that as part of a presidential directive we are looking at other ways of releasing more prisoners and expediting the cases against them.
BBC report: U.S. Attorney General finds no voter fraud that could overturn election. To date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election, said the top U.S. law enforcement agent. His comments come as Mr. Trump has failed to accept defeat. He and his campaign have filed lawsuits in states that he lost, as they begin certifying Joe Biden as the winner. Since 3 November's vote, Mr. Trump has repeatedly made unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud, and members of his legal defense team have spoken of an alleged international plot to hand Mr. Biden the win.
Fox report: what he knew, why Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was marked for death. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, 59, was dubbed everything from Iran's shadow man, and the father of its forthcoming bomb to Tehran's weapons guru and the pervasive threat to the beleaguered nation's nuclear aspirations. The scientist's assassination on the edges of the Iranian capital on Friday, presumed to have been carried out by Israeli operatives, has propelled him from obscurity into the global spotlight. Along with these questions: who was Fakhrizadeh, who lived in a secure compound, had round-the-clock security and was clearly of high value to the regime, and why was he marked for dead?
BBC report: Hungarian MEP Jozsef Szajer quit after police raided gay sex party. Police broke into what Belgian media describe as a gay sex party on Friday. Jozsef Szajer, a top official in Mr. Orban's Fidesz party, apologized for a personal failing. Reports say he tried to flee down a drainpipe. Fidesz is hostile to LGBT rights and backs traditional family values. The party in an apartment in central Brussels was attended by 25 people, mostly male, and was raided by police on suspicion of breaking coronavirus restrictions.
Fox report: Brazilian city seized by armed bandits, bank looted. Rio de Janeiro: dozens of criminals armed with assault rifles invaded a city in southern Brazil overnight and took control of the streets as they assaulted a local bank. Video from residents that was broadcast on the Globo television network showed hooded men dressed in black walking the streets of Criciúma in the state of Santa Catarina, and locals being held hostage. Shots rang out across the city of some 220,000 people.
CNN report: Fraser Island, a unique Australian ecosystem, is on fire as parts of the country swelter through record heat wave. Firefighters in Australia are battling a massive bushfire that has been burning out of control for 6 weeks across the popular tourist spot of Fraser Island, as parts of the country's east swelter through a record-breaking heat wave following the hottest November on record. Tourists and staff on the UNESCO World Heritage Site have been forced to evacuate as the fire closes in on local attractions and the island's unique forests are smothered in smoke.
CNN report. Tired of being sad. The financial stress from COVID is taking an emotional toll. The holidays often make people more vulnerable to feeling depressed or anxious. But for the millions of Americans suffering from a pandemic-induced financial crisis, the risk is much greater this season. Many are at their wits' end. And it doesn't appear that help is on the way. Congress is still at odds over a package that would provide additional economic aid to those who have lost their jobs or are struggling to get by.
Deutsche Welle report. China's Chang'e 5 lands on the moon. China successfully landed its unmanned Chang'e 5 probe on the surface of the moon on Tuesday, according to Chinese state media. The probe successfully landed on the moon in the pre-selected landing area, the official China news service reported, citing space officials. Technical personnel at the Beijing Aerospace Control Center monitor Chang'e 5 as it nears the lunar surface. The historic mission, which was launched on November 24, is aimed at retrieving lunar surface samples to help scientists learn more about the moon's origins.
CNN report. Tens of thousands of farmers swarm India's capital to protest deregulation rules. Tens of thousands of farmers have swarmed India's capital where they intend to camp out for weeks to protest new agricultural laws that they say could destroy their livelihoods. Farmers from the nearby states of Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh began arriving by tractors and on foot at the outskirts of New Delhi last week, where they blocked roads and set up makeshift camps, according to protest leaders.
CNN report. How pharmacies are preparing to give Americans COVID-19 vaccines. In the fight against COVID-19, the U.S. government is enlisting pharmacies to administer vaccines to hundreds of millions of Americans, an endeavor with unprecedented scale that presents a host of challenges for companies big and small across the United States. Although some companies are ready to store and administer the COVID-19 vaccine, others aren't. Several companies are working on vaccines, each with its own particular storage and logistical challenges, and this is new territory for pharmacies, particularly when it comes to storing the Pfizer vaccine, which requires ultra-cold freezers.
BBC report. BTS, South Korea passes law allowing K-pop stars to postpone military service. All able-bodied Korean men aged between 18 and 28 are required to serve in the country's military for about 20 months. But under the revised law, certain pop stars can defer their service if recommended by the culture minister. The move will come as an early birthday present to BTS's oldest member, Jin, who is just days away from turning 28. Under the revised Military Service Act, a pop culture artist who was recommended by the Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism to have greatly enhanced the image of Korea both within the nation and throughout the world, is allowed to postpone service until the age of 30.
Al Jazeera report. Jared Kushner takes on Qatar blockade in Middle East swan song. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law and senior advisor to United States President Donald Trump, has traveled to the Gulf in the waning days of the Trump administration to seek final, long-shot victories in U.S. Middle East policy, including ending a Saudi-led blockade of Qatar, analysts have told Al Jazeera. Kushner, who reportedly arrived in Saudi Arabia on Monday, is likely attempting late-stage achievements in the administration's Middle East policy that has been defined by advancing Israeli interests and applying maximum pressure against Iran, observers said.
Al Jazeera report. Deliberate depression. World Bank's dire warning on Lebanon. Lebanon has been ravaged this year by an economic and financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and a deadly explosion at the port of Beirut. Now, economists at the World Bank are warning that things will get much worse for the embattled nation before they get better, threatening the country's stability. The bank's economists see Lebanon's economy shrinking by a huge 19.2% in 2020 and a further 13%.
Al Jazeera report. Uganda. Several wounded as police clash with Bobi Wine supporters. A music producer for Ugandan singer and presidential candidate Bobi Wine has been wounded in the mouth by a rubber bullet during clashes between security personnel and the politician's supporters, according to a spokesman for his party. The incident on Tuesday is the latest in escalating violence in Uganda as authorities crack down on supporters of 38-year-old Bobi Wine, who is seeking to end the decades-long rule of 76-year-old President Yoweri Museveni in an election scheduled for January 14.
Thank you for watching 5 p.m. recap. To be notified, you can subscribe our channel and activate the bell.